a fun class for me because a lot of gardeners, probably the number one question, I've been doing this 30 years, how do I make my yard look good all year?
Yeah.
So it's always like, well, come to the garden center like once a month, you'll always find something that's in season. But especially this time of year, you know, when we get to winter, the yard does not have to be boring. I think there's a lot of plants in the Pacific Northwest in particular that we can use in the garden that bloom in the winter, look nice all winter. We don't have to worry about cold hardiness. Quite a bit on them as well. So we'll do a little bit of fall color. I brought some evergreens in. We got conifers. We still got lots of great classes here in the next few weeks. So some of the upcoming ones are focusing on those a little bit more, but we'll certainly mention them here today. Were you guys kind of thinking, you said add some stuff to your own yard kind of for winter time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You guys about the same? Just kind of seeing what's out there? Okay.
Yeah, and
well, the sheet's it's a nice long one because I could put about 100 things on here, honestly, and that still wouldn't cover all the cool things for fall color in particular. But try to just mention a few things. It's always conifers first. You know, we're the evergreen state, and I think a lot of people think conifer green. Well, how about conifer yellow, blue, different textures, different styles, different foliages. A lot of things turn color in the wintertime. So if you look at the class list, we'll have a specific conifer one coming up here on just a couple weeks, and we'll just focus on just that. I brought a couple things up just to kind of show you, you know, just some basics here. You know, we could have something fun like, you know, that little push spruce, you know, something for full sun, hot. This got red new growth, but right now in the wintertime, I've got those beautiful little tip cones to kind of add a little interest. That's not a very big plant. We can go something with bright blues. So this is a new spruce called Moonstone from Isley's breeding program. So a little bun-shaped blue spruce for hot sun, super cold hardy, drought tolerant, all that. But again, we've got taller ones. You know, it's a little stiffer texture. You know, if you want to do something a little different. You know, stuff like Fire Chief. That's a really simple little arborvitae. Most people, I think, hear the word arborvitae and they think green hedging. There's all kinds of cool varieties of thuya that turn some really cool colors in the winter. So that's almost orange. I have that in my yard. It looks almost like rusty orange. Springtime, back to lime green to dark green, a little different color.
How big's that kit?
Well, the nice little arborvitae, just like the hedges, we can shear them. So if I let that go for years and years, maybe I end up with something maybe chest level, like a big round bun. But you can clip that, keep it much smaller. Mine's about 20 years old, and it might be 3 feet tall and about 4 feet across. Yeah, really easy. Then something like Cryptomeria, you guys tried these? So that's going to give you a little bit different texture. A lot of people look at that and think maybe tropical, that doesn't belong here, a little prehistoric looking. But Japanese cedars, great climate for those, the same as ours. Some stay bright green, but other ones all get plums, all get purples, all get bronzes, so they're green all year. Then again, wintertime, I get a little splash of color on that as well. So this is one called Spiralis. It's a little dark, a little brighter green, doesn't turn much color, and that will get a little taller, but there's lots of cool dwarf ones down there as well. Then we have pine. So everybody always thinks pine green, but I love the golden pine. So this is a winter pine called Karsten's Winter Gold. So this is one in the season, a little more green, but as we start to get cool nights here in the fall, it just turns pure yellow for the winter. It doesn't drop its needles, nothing changes. Then we come to spring, kind of back to green again. So again, a lot of landscapes with green everywhere, something like that really does pop, especially in the wintertime. And even some cool hemlocks, if you got a little more shade, like morning sun, a little bit afternoon shade, the hemlocks, I can go white, you know, silvers, different textures on those. And this one I have in my yard again, it almost gets a little pink color on the tips in the winter, which is awful pretty too when we get cold. So lots of fun conifers. If you want to look, instead of like at 5 or 6, but like 50 or 60 of them, we'll have that conifer class here coming up. And we'll bring a whole bunch of those little guys in. So I'm just going to show you.
are most of them, how are most of the evergreens as far as drought tolerance?
Drought tolerant. Most everything, you know, yews, we need to water a little bit, hemlocks a little bit, but it's pine, spruce, cypress, a lot of the other stuff's going to pretty much be on its own down the road.
And will they do okay with heat, like
and
in a
heat,
rock garden space?
Oh, absolutely. I've got a bunch of that stuff in mine. And we got a lot of dwarf stuff out there, so that might be a good class for you coming to it, the conifers, because we'll go through everything, dwarf, miniature, all the above, up to big stuff. But lots of, definitely, I'd say the the vast majority out there is going to be for hot sun, and you know, again, a little bit of water for a summer or two. Once they get rooted in, there's stuff on mine I just walked away from. We don't have to mess with them at all. So yeah, very, very easy. So there's some conifers. You know, broadleaf to evergreens, we obviously keep our foliage in the winter time. So this was stuff that would not turn fall color necessarily, drop its leaves like deciduous plants, but things that might turn some color in the winter again, but hold their foliage. Again, we got a lot of evergreens around here, and I tend to look around the wintertime, my neighbors, other places I go, a lot of green, rhododendron, azalea, camellia. There's nothing wrong with any of that, but we have all that green. What could we add kind of here and there that says, oh wow, I got a little variegation or a little bit of winter color going? So I brought up some stuff for sun, some stuff for shade again. If we look at a couple things for sun, first one I always bring out here in the fall is the strawberry tree. So this is a relative of our native madrone, the arbutus family. And this is the dwarf strawberry tree, quote unquote, which still means it probably gets about 10 or 12 feet when you get an old plant. But this actually blooms in the fall, gets a little fruits that are like strawberries. They're not strawberries, but they're not poisonous or anything. But birds will usually like those, the squirrels, a little bit of wildlife. But it certainly adds some nice interest this time of year. Nice easy green, full sun again. That would be on your drought tolerant as well. Yeah,
we have one that the deer love to eat.
Deer like to nibble? Yeah, the deer do
like. The leaves are like gone.
Deer like to nibble. A little bit of like some deer repellent will help on some of that too, yeah, especially on the new growth. Yeah, that'll really help. Okay. Couple more broadleaves for sun. So Nandina, you know, this again would be a typical, pretty common these days. There's a lot of great varieties. We tend to go for foliage color, you know, when we're choosing. We don't carry the tall kind of species, leggy ones much anymore, but a lot of the dwarf, compact ones for specific colors. So burgundy wine, bonfire, Gulf Stream, we go on and on. Some of the newer stuff, I have one of these in my house. It's called pomegranate, one of the ones from Bailey. So this would turn brilliant purple red here as we get cold and just sit there for the winter with that color, and then we get to spring and I'm back to green with a little bit of color on the new growth. So excellent one for sun, you know, again, drought tolerant, a little bit of foliage color change through the year, and a really easy plant to grow. They call that heavenly bamboo. It's not really anything to do with bamboo, so it's not going to be invasive like the typical bamboos. A couple variegated things. Well, let's do this one first. So everybody knows azaleas. You guys got azaleas?
Yep.
Got a little bit. So there's nothing wrong with any azaleas, but I always try to talk to customers. If I'm coming in and I want a pink or a red or a fuchsia or whatever color it is, look at your variety options, because I think everyone would agree the flowers are going to be nice on all of them when they bloom. But if I can get another season of interest in the fall, winter, that's the way I would go. So a lot of the azaleas I chose in my yard 20 years ago and still do today, it's like, okay, I love the flower, but what does it look like in the winter? What is the growth habit? So there's a lot of great azaleas that frankly are evergreen. You can just see the burgundy purple starting to come through on the leaves on something like that. So instead of green in the winter, now I'm looking out and seeing something with burgundy or purple or reddish tone that again adds a little bit of interest. Doesn't drop its leaves, it doesn't make any difference, but I get a nice flower, I think a little nicer looking plant in the winter. So stuff like this is one called maraschino, a great little dwarf red one, George fuchsia, Johanna, we got variegated ones out there. There's a lot of good azaleas. I think you'd like the spring flower just the same, but now you get the benefit of having a little bit of winter foliage color as well. So probably explore a little bit of those. And even our rhododendrons. You know, look at that little guy turning all kinds of different colors in there. So anything in that PJM, they call them, they're kind of the lepidote rhododendrons. So you're going to see a little smaller leaf, very good insect resistance. Again, maybe a little better drought tolerance, sun tolerance, all the above. These bloom really early, but they're always known for turning all kinds of shades of color on some of the leaves, dropping a little bit. This will all turn like a mahogany, purplish color in the winter, and then we get to spring, they bloom, right back to green again. Off we go for another season. So again, typical rhododendrons, we got variegated ones, add some foliage interest or something like that's going to give you a little bit of fall color as well.
Yeah, okay.
So rhodey's always a common one. A couple things that are variegated. Now whether I'm doing sun or shade, I think you could agree. No, again, yellow's not everybody's thing. I love variegation in yellow. It's not everybody's thing, so if it's not your thing, you don't have to do it in the garden. But if I take a look at any plant, I've always got a variegated version. You know, instead of just another green shrub, it's like, man, give me the one with the yellow splash, or the pinks, or the whites, or whatever color is on there, and I'm going to have a little bit more interest, you know, as we, again, all through the season, especially in the wintertime. So like this is a false holly. Looks like holly, has a little prickly leaves, not quite as bad as holly, but this doesn't have the red berries that holly does and the invasiveness and all the rest of it. So if I'm looking for that holly look, but I like the variegated color, this is something I can shear, I can grow as a nice shrub, takes sun, takes a little shade, but spectacular foliage. You know, that would be a great foliage plant. That's one called Goshiki with the variegated leaves. You know, same with Pieris. You know, I think a lot of us have the Andromeda shrubs. Right now, even the green ones look pretty here in the fall, winter. I look out, I've got all my flower buds sitting there waiting to go for spring. That's one of those plants I always look at in November, December and say, spring's coming, look at the flower buds, they're ready to go. And those always open up early, so we would have some help, you know, in that March time frame with flower late winter. But if I go away from green and I get one of the variegated ones, like this is Flaming Silver, we get other varieties like that. Now I've added in a little bit of foliage color, still have a nice bloom. The new growth is beautiful come spring, and we get a little bit in the fall too. But that certainly might be an option for even another kind of typical evergreen plant.
What is that one called?
This one's called Flaming Silver.
Flaming Silver.
Yeah, it's a little Pieris. Yeah, variety of Pieris. And we've got, again, we've got other variegated ones out there too that are nice as well. This one will get a little taller. If I wanted a little shorter one, I would get Little Heath. Same leaf like that, but a nice little tighter, you know, kind of bushy one, a little bit lower to the ground. Another plant we love in the winter is Leucothaway. So you can see the color already coming through on that evergreen right there. I'm going to turn like a deep purple scarlet color. This is one called Scarletta. I've always got nice colorful new growth. Then I've got a nice frosting. It doesn't lose its leaves again. It's evergreen, but I've got some beautiful deep red to purple winter color on it. Just holds there in the winter. Back to spring, we turn green, we bloom. This blooms in April, May, little white flowers, and then off we go for another season. So this is a useful, a lot of these are native, Coast Leucothaway is native in the Pacific Northwest, but a lot of these cultivars like that perform like our native species, but very easy to use as a nice foundation shrub, something very manageable in size. I would go more sun than shade with that. I think you're going to have better foliage color, a little nicer looking plant, but Leucothaway can take kind of a little bit of both, to be honest with you. Okay. The quintessential winter bloomer is Sarcococa. We don't have to spell that one. That's a tough one to spell. But sweet box. So we have low ones. This is one I have in my yard again. It might get up to my knee or so. And we also have taller options. Okay. Those are for good shade. If I have deep dark shade or mostly shade, that's a great shrub for shade. For one, I pick my heights, low, medium, all the way up to me with russifolia, and those are very drought tolerant once they get going. That's a plant I use underneath eaves at my house, so even in the wintertime with no rain getting on it, still is happy when we don't think about watering much. So we get those established. They're very, very easy to grow. Yes?
When do you prune that?
So this is an old wood bloomer. If I look at that plant right now, I can't count that high, but I could probably count about 10,000 little white flower buds on every one of these stems. So this is about to bloom here right after the holidays. So those will bloom December, January, February. They smell incredible. If I'm going to prune it, it's right after bloom.
But they make berries.
So but that again, you can leave the berries if you want. It's going to be up to you. But if I'm going to prune that, I need to do it coming out of winter, because then I get the wood, I get the growth, it sets flower buds, and then I bloom again the next year. If I go out and do it in the summer or the fall, you're going to cut your flowers off. Yeah, for sure. Okay. A couple last ones in broadleaf. These will be a little more for shade, but if I look at something like Fatsia, you know, again, beautiful leaves. I've got one of these underneath a big, huge rhododendron in my front yard as an underplant. That looks really nice in the wintertime. Big, bold leaves, some nice variegation on it. That's a variety called Spiderweb, or we have one splash, kind of lime green, dark green, called Camouflage. I have both those at my place. We have both of them here, too, in our shade garden. But that doesn't need any direct sun. It's a great little specimen for dry shade. And the same with the Cuba. Some people call this Japanese laurel, but I would have the very nice foliage again, bigger plant as that grows. We have some little bit smaller growers up there too, but that loves dry, dark shade. If I got a deep, dark green corner, I want a little pop of color. That's one of the best types of shrubs to throw in there to just kind of brighten it up with a little nicer foliage again, especially in the wintertime. The last broadleaf tier, I think I got I got 2 left here, is Mahonia. Okay. Now I'm always honest in my classes. This is one I've tried at my house a few times on the ground. The rabbits will eat this if you have rabbits in about 1 day. Mine are gone in a day. Deer would be probably the same way. So I use these in pots now as a specimen. Rabbits can't get at it. It's perfectly fine, but you can see what's that doing. It's blooming now. So my hummingbirds are gonna love that. That's one of their favorite flowers around here. This will be blooming here in the fall. We have other Mahonias, hybrids that go in December, January, February, and then we have our native Mahonias that get that March, April, May time frame. So I mean, we can have a nice Mahonia species in there to keep our hummingbirds happy. They're plenty hardy, they grow well. This is kind of a fun one they call Soft Caress. Doesn't have the spiny leaves like typical Oregon grape does up here, but a very nice flower, but much earlier than our native one as well. So this is a hard plant for us to get. We were able to get a bunch here for fall. Finally, when they're right on time for bloom, but we do have a good little chunk of those in right now as well. I think the last couple here are winter bloomers. So we have camellia. Everyone got camellia? You got a couple? So if I was doing camellia again, I don't know that this needs to go in deep dark shade. I would try to find a half sun, half shade location. Ideally, to me, this is like east side of the house. Morning sun, a little bit of shade in the afternoon, or shade all day and a little blast late in the afternoon in the summertime. But this is an evergreen plant, grows a little bigger. Camellias can be pruned, but this will set its flower buds over the summer. This is one called Yuletide. Guess when it blooms? Right at Christmas. I have other ones in November. We've got January, we've got February. We could pick a month in the wintertime or a couple months. We would have a nice camellia that would match that time frame too. If you want a little bit of winter flowering, that's a great choice for flower. The last little evergreen here is Daphne. So I think this is a great plant. I've got this one in my yard too. So this is what we call winter Daphne. So spectacular foliage, A, and B, this is gonna smell incredible when it blooms about Valentine's Day through March into early April. So at the tail end of winter, it'll still be in full bloom in my garden and really look nice. The key with Daphne is drainage. I won't lie to you. If you got wet, you got clay, don't buy the Daphne. I gotta have water going through. I've killed many Daphnes in my day in my yard in different areas, and other places they do great. So no water, not much water, but I wanna really make sure I've got no hard pan or clay. The water's gotta go right through the soil when we do something like that.
Can you grow that in a pot?
Absolutely, yeah, that'd be a great container plant, because then again, you can control the moisture. Just make sure you get none of that Miracle Grow Costco soil, holds too much moisture again, so just keep it a nice, well-drained organic mix. You're gonna check down in your containers probably a couple inches to make sure they're really dry before you water it again, and he'll be happy in there for a long time, yeah, for sure. So a couple evergreens there for you. I didn't bring all of them in. Maybe the one I didn't. Skimmia blooms in the winter. We've got some of that up there. If you've got the shade, we do he's and she's on that. That's one of those plants. If we have both, the female would get some nice berries on it after the flowering, but those would bloom like December, January, and we'd have our berries to look at over the winter time on the female. But we have some of those. That's an easy kind of little foundation plant as well. Okay. Now fall color. For a minute, I brought in quite a bit, probably too many to go through all of them, but I kind of tried to spread some cool fall color stuff across the front and around the corner here. So any deciduous plant, if I lose my leaves, I'm gonna turn nice color. I just wrote for the paper this week, I think it'll come out Friday on this subject, and trying to let people a couple of tips, because a lot of folks come to me this time of year and say, why do I drive up Highway 2 and I look out in the woods and I see the brightest oranges and yellows and golds and reds, vine maples and all the aspen, whatever else, it's really bright. I go to my yard and I got a bunch of brown and yellow. Why? Well, you're probably watering too much would be my first answer. We got to let things kind of harden off. Mother Nature is always going to do that for our native plants around here. So try to cut the water down a little bit if you're not getting much fall color. But there's a lot of deciduous plants available to us that we can use for great fall color. A lot of them are going to give us berries this time of year, or a little bit of interest for the birds in the winter, and a lot of barks, peely barks, bright bark color, things like that when I lose my leaves. And again, I've got so much green around a typical landscape in our area, and I have a white birch or a stewardia, you know, a paper bark maple, Japanese maples like coral bark, things like that really look nice during the winter months when everything's going on. Almost look better sometimes then than they do with foliage on them in the summertime. So I brought quite a bit of deciduous up. I'll show you a few, but you'll see as you walk out here, I mean, I'm looking out the door going, why didn't I bring that smoke tree in here? Why don't I have that in here? Because there's some really good colors going right now. A lot of times at the nursery, you'll see it maybe a little earlier than your landscape, because we're in pots, we hand water here, we don't sprinkler everything. So we try to let things get a little stressed late summer so they do turn nice color. So you'll see as you walk around out after the class, all kinds of cool plants in full fall glory. So if I start over here at the corner, can you see the tip of that guy? He's kind of already doing his fall color thing. But that's one I always like to bring in a bunch this time of year. So that's a vine maple that would be a native plant for our area, but that's one called Pacific Fire. So if I like the idea of having a native tree, multi-stem, not super big, nice fall color, but I want wood color on that. That's got yellow base all the way to coral wood on the tips. You'll see them, a bunch of them out there with the bright stems. You know, that may be a great choice for you. That's a sweet plant for both the fall color and a little bit of winter interest with the bark tones. You'll see a hybrid Japanese maple there turning bright in the fall. That's one of our favorite ones called Ever Autumn. So that's actually a Japanese maple crossed with vine maple. Turns color reliably, maybe a little bit earlier. It's got a little bigger leaf than typical Japanese maples, but that's a sweet little fall color plant. I could honestly, again, walk out there and probably find 50 different kinds of Japanese maple we have right now that are all turning great color. So there'd be some good choices with that. You'll see down here another example of twig color. So I can look at that, I can see kind of again that corally branching down towards yellow in the trunk. That's a great new maple called Gold Digger. So that would be a smaller grower, a little bit smaller leaf, great fall color again, but I would have that stem color to enjoy in the winter months as well. Okay. Speaking of stem color, it doesn't get much better than twig dogwood. So anyway, you guys got that going in the yard? Anybody?
We tried.
Tried. So that's the opposite of our drought tolerant. If I had a wet area, heavy clay, someplace doesn't drain quite as well, that's usually a typical choice for that. If you would drive around here, we would see native twig dogwoods growing in the ditches and the irrigation canals and that kind of stuff. So a nice plant for the birds. I have a few in my own yard. Love the twig color in the winter. They turn pretty colors in the fall. They do bloom and get a nice little berry on them for the birds around here too this time of year. So we got red twig, we got yellow twig, or we can do kind of orangey twig with varieties like Midwinter Fire and some of the other ones. We can almost get all three. Years ago, I took red, yellow, and orange and just planted them 3 feet apart in my front bank for the birds. I got a massive thicket of twig-colored stems everywhere going. Looks pretty cool when driving home in the wintertime. And again, pretty low maintenance. Got to prune it every few years to say that's enough, and we cut them back. But as long as we got water on them and they don't get too dry, twig dogwood does great. Super, super hardy. You'll see lots of viburnums out there. That particular one glowing in the front is a cranberry bush. So I have the larger version in my yard as well, which gives me a 10-foot specimen with big bunches of berries on it this time of year for the birds again. But all the viburnums would be at the top of the fall color category. If I'm looking for a really nice rich fall color, nice easy to grow plants, viburnum's very diverse. There's probably 10, 12 different kinds of viburnum out there that would all be perfect for this class this time of year. This is a plant you don't see a lot of people use. This is a plant called Fothergilla, and that's one I wish more people would use in their yard. That's a really cool plant, I think, for fall, for winter, for spring, for all year. They're very durable. They look a little native, kind of fit in with a lot of the native yards around here. But at the top of the totem pole for fall color, when that's in its full glory, I will see red, purple, orange, salmon, pink, just about every tone in the rainbow mixing on that foliage. And that blooms in May with a really nice fragrant little white flower spike too. Is really nice in spring as well. So Fothergilla, very manageable in size. We tend to carry all the dwarf ones again. So dwarf in that world is, you know, 3, 4, maybe 5 feet. If I leave them if I don't prune them, I can always prune them back a little bit as well. Okay. Up top here we have spirea. These guys, probably everybody's got a little spirea. So again, that one will take a little more wet. I think spirea is at the top of the totem pole for easy to grow. We'll use these in my yard as well. Nice bloom, nice foliage color, but really nice rich fall color. And I like the fact they bloom on new wood. So I walk out here in a couple months over the winter, just shear my twigs back to a little mound, and then off we go in the spring and we bloom right on new wood. So very, very easy plant that you can get some nice color on the foliage. Burning bush. Everyone's done the burning bush thing, right? So they're just starting to do their burning bush here. I've seen a lot of these in landscapes around already kind of starting to turn that pinky red here for fall. But look at your options again. This is another plant. A lot of people see the word dwarf and picture this cute little, you know, 2 foot by 2 foot little miniature shrub. Well, dwarf in the burning bush world, if I don't prune, it's kind of like we talked about earlier, maybe 8 or 10 feet tall as it gets old. So that's something easy to prune, but I just want to make sure I do so if I want to keep a little bit smaller. Okay. We got a couple more on top here. So anybody got the calicarpa, the beauty berries on there? So this is a plant that'll turn some fall color here, but this one's more about late season bloom. So I get those cute little purple flowers late summer, early fall, and you can see the first couple of berries are starting to develop. I would have those metallic purple little bunches of berries on there for the fall season to start the winter off, and then they fall off at some point. We'll see you again next year. But that's a nice little taller plant. You know, if you want something a little bigger, probably 6 or 8 feet tall on those. Little multi-stem shrub, but certainly will give you some great fall color and the nice berries as a bonus. Another berry one here is the aronias. Now, we carry quite a bit of these during the growing season. If you can see the oranges and the colors going through on that. Most of this traditionally was a big plant. You know, a lot of the nurseries didn't carry much aronia. Some people call it choke cherry because they were just big. We have native aronias around here. There's native aronias around most of the country, but it's just a big, bushy, kind of thicket plant. Back east, the Maine Botanical Garden did some serious breeding, and now we've got a lot of really nice tidy ones. This whole low-scape series out of Proven Winners. I can do kind of a low, like foot tall, 2 foot tall, 3 foot tall. I don't have to let it get so big. But it's a great plant for spring bloom. Again, one of the best ones for fall color. And you can see these are young, but maybe I knocked them off. There's just a few berries on there so far. You can see those black ones. So that would really get a nice crop of those little miniature berries for the birds as well. Choke cherries, we can do red or we can do black typically. But you'll see some of those out there as well. Okay. We'll get to the top here first. So crepe myrtle. Anybody try crepe myrtle yet? I'm going to get another one from my place because I think now we're warm enough in the summer they actually bloom. You know, my whole life I thought, it's a nice plant, but they never flower up here because we don't get quite hot enough. I've seen them blooming now 3-4 years in a row in the summertime. So crepe myrtle is great for fall color, and I wish we had older ones up here because really cool bark. So if I grow crepe myrtle as a specimen, you know, again, there's some nice dwarf ones. Typical crepe myrtle might be a multi-stem little plant up 10-12 feet, but great fall color, really hot, intense flowering just in August and September when we're super hot. And then some really cool bark when you get some older plants. That does look really sharp in the wintertime. Well, I'll tell you, for us, I don't ever do zone 8. You know, that's a zone I avoid because whatever the internet says, they're lying to you. We're not zone 8. So a lot of ours are 6. And I've even seen some now in the 5s. We'll have some other new ones next year. They've done a lot of breeding on crepe myrtle for the northern climates. One of our major growers of them is in Minnesota, for goodness sake, now. So we get some from much colder areas that I think will perform well. A lot of people look on the internet and ask us for crepe myrtle, and frankly the wrong one. It's like, okay, hey, I see your red flower, but why not that? Let's do this one. Because we want you to have success. You know, I want you to see the flower, and live year to year. So we try to stay, we get a couple in the zone 7, but we get the majority of ours now are down there zone 6, which I got no problem with worrying about that time of the winter. But we just want the hottest spot in the yard. You know, if you came to me and said, I got one south facing wall, what do I want to put on there? I'd vote for crepe myrtle or a fig, one of those two, because that's the only way you're going to get them to grow really well. So lots of heat. Blueberries, we obviously eat them, but man, there's nothing prettier than northern high bush blueberry in the fall. I mean, that just lights up with fall color. Really good plant. I live right in Everett, up above Lowell. If you're ever driving around this time of year, head down the old Lower Larimer Road there between Everett out to Marsh. That family's got probably put in, and I'm not exaggerating, like 5 million high bush blueberries. The whole valley's filled. This time of year is just a sea of scarlet across the whole valley. It looks really pretty when the blueberries are turning, so that's always an easy one too.
Do the deer eat those?
Deer might nibble on the wood a little bit on the blueberry, yeah, but that's one, again, I've had pretty good luck. We had some of those at our place in Eastern Washington years ago, and you get a little repellent on there, you'll be okay. Yeah, you don't need to get too crazy with that. A little bit of late flower. I always bring in PG hydrangea. These are sun hydrangeas this time of year. These are blooming a little late because we got some in late, so they'll still turn pink. But this is the time of year, if we had that in our season, we're going to see that flower go white to light pink to deep pink to almost red as we start to get colder and colder. So again, I think a nice fall interest flower that's always blooming late, blooming strong, and really easy to grow style of hydrangea. I think the last is a couple more on top. So this is another maple I brought in. You can see, it's turning color, but this would be another example, kind of like a couple we talked about over there. That yes, I get great fall color, but I'm also getting the twigs with this. This is one called Bihou, B-I-H-O-U. I've got this at my house. I planted one down the Arboretum in Everett years ago. So yellow wood, not really the coral, but a really nice bright yellow, not a big plant. You know, that one might, I don't know if it's ever going to get quite to 10 feet tall, to be honest. But nice fall color, great twig color in the winter, and that's a nice one for pots or the shady side of the house. We don't want to have that in afternoon sun. We would want to do that on the north or the east side in the garden or in a little container. But really, we can hardly ever get very many of these. We just got some really nice ones in out there last week, so we do have some nice Bihus out there. You'll see, they did bring me a Weigelia down here. Well, let's start here. So this is a relative of honeysuckle. Look at the color on that going right now. So that's an indestructible little plant. The Dyervilla is a relative of honeysuckle. Not just finished blooming in summer. It's a nice little yellow flower, but they're doing a lot of breeding on these. This is a plant we get in quite a bit now, and I'll have even more next year. I could almost pick orange, purple, red, black, lime. I could pick any color foliage I want and buy that variety. So I would have that color all through the season, and it intensifies in spring when it leaves out, and then fall before it drops its leaves. So a great filler plant. I think this is one that doesn't get super tall, but would eat up some area side to side, and they are absolute bulletproof. I don't say that about a lot of plants, but there's really no bug, no disease. They don't care about crappy soil. You can go sun, you can go shade, you can go just about anywhere with those. We found, especially the lighter color ones, a little bit of afternoon shade is great, but the dark foliage ones that we get in, you could have out in full sun. They do very, very well. So
what's
that's
the variety of that again?
This one I'd have to pick. We can look after the class at the name. I think that's one of the red ones. I want to say it's Nightfall, but we'll look after class here. Yeah, because I've got 3 or 4 or 5 different kinds out there still. Yeah. Smoke tree is turning. I missed Weigelia here. Most people ask for Wigglia. That sounds more fun to say than Weigelia. So Weigelia would give me a nice spring bloom, all deciduous, but great fall color. That's a variegated one. I'll call more colorful right there. Pink flower, nice variegated leaves. We're starting to see the reds and the oranges come in. We would have other kinds out there that have gold foliage or dark foliage or even purple-black foliage. But certainly a great dwarf old-fashioned shrub, especially if you like the hummingbirds. That's a great flower for the hummingbirds in the spring as well. Smoke tree, some people call it smoke tree, we call it smoke bush. It's the same plant. However you want to prune it is going to tell it what you want to do with it. So I've seen smoke tree 20 feet tall. I've seen the same plant 4 or 5 feet tall. Just depends on how you want to kind of prune it into a shrub, or let it get tall and open and get a small tree in the yard as well. But smoke tree, again, top of the totem pole for fall color. We can do gold ones, which turn kind of more orangey tones in the fall. The purplish cast ones, I'm going to turn more crimson, scarlet, and pinks in the fall. So we can get kind of either way on those. This is a great plant right here. Now, we talked about viburnum a little bit. This is a specific one. If we were a month later, that thing would be lit up with a red burgundy color. It would drop its leaves, and I would start to see my fragrant flowers coming out in November. So that's what we call pink dawn viburnum, a nice big tall specimen shrub, but that would smell great, and that blooms starting in November off and on the entire winter through spring. So you probably got 4 or 5 months of flowering here and there on that all through the winter months, and then we leaf back out green in the spring, and off we go for another season. So that's one, again, you don't tend to find around a lot during the spring season in particular, but we're able to get a pretty good chunk of those here fall, winter, you know, through March, April kind of thing when they're blooming. Okay, I think there's a couple. I brought a cotoneaster in down there, and you know, some people, that's another one, they usually ask for cotton Easter, but cotoneaster is another shrub with berries on it and fall color. So we got evergreen cotoneaster, we've got all kinds of choices. That one in particular is called Autumn Inferno, so that will light up with color, and it kind of has that bare, just kind of almost that wishbone pattern on the foliage as it branches out. So we would have color plus the little berries on that as well, because that one does lose its leaves. One of my favorite flowering trees is crabapple. I love crabapple, especially modern crabapple. That's one called Ruby Days. I think probably the top variety these days for gardeners to use. So crab apples are a little different these days. One, on different root stocks, so we have no suckering. If we spend the money to get a proper crab apple like that one, they're a little more expensive, but I'm going to have zero maintenance. I have no scab, I have no mildew, I have no bugs, I have no problems, I have no pruning, I have nothing to do except watch it, enjoy as it grows. So that one you can see hot pink flower in spring in particular, but right now I've got the small little crab apples for the birds to enjoy, which is what my favorite time of year. Those are outside. We've got different colored ones out there, yellow fruits, orange fruits, red ones, and different blooms. You'll see the birds out there just going to town on the little crab apples this time of year. So very, very easy tree to grow without having to spray or really do a lot of maintenance on. Very, very low maintenance trees. On the far corner here, we've got a couple of gems. So we've got, this is ginkgo, and this is paperbark maple. So if we look at ginkgo, that's a prehistoric plant. That's actually a conifer, believe it or not. It produced all the needle trees that we have about 300 million years ago when evolution split. That was the original conifer that actually produces a cone. But I don't think there's still a plant anywhere on the world today that turns as bright a gold as a ginkgo tree. If you've seen ginkgo tree in the fall, that is the absolute quintessential golden fall color. So ginkgo usually is big. We tend to carry, we got some tall ones out there, but we also get a lot of dwarf stuff, so we don't have to have, you know, a 40, 50 foot tree down the road. That one's called jade butterflies, you know, maybe 10 or 12 feet with some cool character to it. We have other ones like troll and American that are shrubs. You know, I might end up with maybe a 6 foot tall plant down the road that's much bushier. But if I want a very cool leaf, very unique, but certainly for the gold fall color, that would be the one to grab if you like the yellows. Paperbark, I think, is one of the most underused tree species in our area. If I want a tree for all seasons, that's one I really like to tell people. Cool peely, copper colored bark all through the season, especially noticeable in the winter. Really nice orange to red fall color, and very manageable size again. A lot of the maples we tend to grow around here are really shade trees that get up 30, 40, 50 feet with age. Paperbark will be about half of that. So I mean, I can really have a nice landscape tree for a modern yard that's got some good interest that wouldn't be quite as big that way. Okay. I think the last deciduous one I brought in, you can see the twisted branches right here on that. So that's contorted filbert. That's been a really hard plant for us to get, probably going 3 years now. We got a great selection right now, finally this year for the fall, winter, and spring. The biggest thing with filbert is what we call filbert blight. So the green leaf filberts are very susceptible to getting a disease out of our native greenbelt areas called filbert blight or eastern filbert blight. So we tend to get the red foliage ones in, like red dragon or red majestic. Those were bred immune to that problem because of the state of Oregon, honestly. Imagine if we did this class in Portland and everybody's growing hazelnuts, filberts in their landscapes. You couldn't have that plant in your yard because they'd be like, you can't grow that down here. You're going to give our production disease kind of thing. So Oregon State bred those for the customers down there. Now all of us can use them. They don't have to worry about that. I can still have that in my yard. So great specimen plant. Twisted branches, they bloom in the winter. That one will have a little more pink on the catkins when they bloom, you know, in January, February when they flower. But, you know, I wouldn't buy it necessarily for fall color. They do look nice in the fall, but that would be one where once it loses its leaves, very cool texture plant for the winter time. Yeah, fun twigs, nice winter bloom. Okay? I think that got all the way too many deciduous things in here, right? So last couple things here in front are just some kind of, we're doing again, I've got an evergreen perennial class coming up here in a couple weeks, and we really hit the hellebores pretty hard, heucheras, berginias, other plants that are technically classified as perennials but are evergreen. So I'm not buying a cone flower, enjoying it for the whole year and watching it melt in the fall. We'll see you next year. This is stuff that still has winter presence. So I brought a few in just to show you a couple, but that would be a class to come down, and we'll focus on that here in a couple weeks. So if I'm going to look at fall, number one, anybody got hardy cyclamen? So this is the time of year you have to grab these. We cannot get these any other time of year except October, November, December. We have our couple hundred in, and when they're gone, I won't be able to find them again until next October. So great selection right now. We've got both coum and heterofolium. This is one plant that does nothing in the summer. Typical cyclamen, if yours is like mine, just disappears. It goes dormant in the opposite season. So once it gets warm, it shrivels up, goes and hides for the winter. The fall, brand new foliage, we start to bloom, and we've got to enjoy that for the entire winter season. So I think a really cool plant, grows from a little coum, a little bulb, but that's one we can naturalize in most any woodland or shady garden. A great little plant for the fall, winter time for sure. If you look up there, I love it when they come in because I'll just sit there and stare at the table. They're all the same species, but that's where you get the fun foliage. You can look at every single one of those leaves like, wow, that's got a little more lime, and this one's a little more white, a little more green. You can pick out exactly what you want, and I will see a huge variation from white to light pink to dark pink to sometimes almost close to red. I can see my flower variation in there too, so you can really pick out kind of the one that catches your eye that way. If I'm going for flower, what did I tell my wife? Sorry, I spent another 75 bucks at my job yesterday because I brought home my 50 pansies for the winter. So that's the only flower that I put in, I think gardeners around here should use, that literally doesn't care what the winter does. I mean, they freeze like shriveled up ice cubes last winter when it was 7 in December. Thought, nah, this is the year. There's no way they're going to come back after that. And a week later, it warmed up. There they go, blooming again. So, I mean, if I put pansies in my pots, my window boxes, tuck them in a couple of areas by the door in the landscape, that cheers me up coming home. I like my orange and yellow, so it cheers me up coming home when it's gray for the 40th straight day, and it's like, oh, look, I got some flowers going by the house for the winter. So grab your pansies. That's one to do here pretty quick. I think a couple years ago I waited a week too late and I run this place so I didn't have any pansies for the winter because we didn't have any left. So the growers do run out, especially the way it's been going this fall. I think they'll be out here at some point pretty quick. So grab your pansies here for the winter time. What else did I bring in here? I got a couple more down this way. Now, I have a problem with heucheras. I'm the poster child for what I call heucheraitis, the addiction to heucheras. So I have way too many of these in my yard. I probably have 30 varieties of these across my yard. Pots, borders, sun, shade, everywhere. I always buy more heucheras and then play with them in the pots, move them to the yard and give them to friends and divide them. They're all kinds of fun. But that's an evergreen perennial, really low, great color. We have to get really cold for these to go to nothing in the winter, and then they'll still come back in the spring. But I could literally, you'll see in the perennial class, I could put a rainbow up here from white with green to lime green to pinks to orange to peach to red to purple. Any color in the rainbow you can find a heuchera. So I mean, depending on where you're doing it, if you're like me in the yard, ooh, I got green, let's get some purple. I got this color, let's go to that. You can really, I think, pop some in the landscape or containers is a great way to grow them too. But heucheras is a fun little wintertime perennial for the foliage. Anemones are always blooming. These will disappear here once we get a hard frost. This is, if anybody got anemones, so you know the gift that keeps on giving, I call it. Yeah, you'll get a few anemones. If you buy one, you'll get some free ones, right?
Yeah, the deer like that.
Deer like those too, they do. I'll bring both these up at once because this is heather, and sometimes people, I think, get confused with with heathers in particular. So we have Erica, which we would call heaths. These are Irish. Then we got my homeland, Scotland. We got the Calunas, okay? So this is about flower. If I want something that blooms starting here in a couple weeks, and I want winter flower color all through the winter into March, you want Ericas. We have them on special out there on top of the class discount you guys are going to get for coming. These are on super special for like $8.99 still. We got a couple hundred out there, different colors. So if I want evergreen, sun, very low maintenance, go get some heathers. That's a great one for pollinators in the winter and a good early bloomer to get things kind of hopping for spring. The darkest one is always Kramer's Rote. We get 5 to 1 over any other variety. People that want that hot fuchsia pink color, that's the one you want, is the Kramer's Red or Kramer's Rote, okay? On the other side is Kaluna. Now you can see these just bloomed or just finishing blooming, right? Different texture. So these are summer bloomers for the most part on Kalunas, but this is about, I use both because there's my flower, this is my foliage color. So a lot of the Kalunas really turn intense yellows, oranges, and reds. Don't drop their needles or leaves, but I would keep my foliage in the winter and have a really nice foliage plant. So Firefly Heather has got to be one of the most popular plants around here. We go through hundreds of them, people in pots, the landscape, but you'll see some other good varieties of Kalunas or Scotch Heathers that'll give me a pop of foliage color in the winter and give me a nice bloom again the next spring, okay? So heathers are always a good one here to mention. Brought a couple more down here. Grasses. We had grass class here a few weeks ago. You know, and I think all the grasses frankly look cool in the fall. I got grasses all over my landscape. So for the fall season, you know, I don't mind. They turn beige, they turn tan, shades of brown. That's pretty color in the winter too, and they keep their structure. If I cut them back, get rid of them, you're fine. We'll see you next year. But even those are just starting to bloom right now, or plume. And I've got a couple months of fun here before I do want to cut it back. I leave a lot of mine, again, motion, sound, structure in the wintertime is pretty cool too. But in this class, we'll do some evergreen. You know, I just took home 3 more of these. There's another plant I never seem to have enough of, the New Zealand sedge. So pots, border plants, easy plant to throw in a container for the winter, a couple pansies. I got a cool looking pot for the winter. I can always take that out and move it into my yard down the road, you know, when it gets in the pot for a few years. So a little bit, not much height, just a foot or so, or a little lower ones are a lot of the sedges. You know, Eversheen, Everrest, Everrillo is one I use at my place. Nice color in the wintertime. That's again, evergreen. I'm not going to turn brown and go dormant like a typical grass. I can use that in my garden or a container, I think, for a really nice looking plant for the wintertime, okay? The last couple here, see if I can get all 3. So like I mentioned earlier, we're gonna, you know, we could talk, you can ask me about hellebores after the class, but we're just getting in hellebores. This is a plant I think most gardeners utilize in our area. Super drought tolerant, do some dry shade. I think they take more sun than most people give them credit for too. I've got a lot of mine in sun. But look at the foliage. I mean, this isn't in bloom right now, and the modern one's just exquisite foliage color. nice little clumpy evergreen leaves. And then these, depending on the variety, we got blooms in November, December, January, February, March, all the way into April. So you'll see a lot of the fall hellebores in that will give me flowers right now going through the holidays, and then a lot of the early, late winter, early spring bloomers as well. So we've got quite a bit. There's a lot coming in here in the next few weeks, because that's one plant. Something that's the opposite of the rhodies and azaleas. You come down here in March, see 100 different rhodies to choose from in bloom. You come down here in the winter, you're going to see the 40, 50 different hellebores to choose from, depending on what flower you want. So hellebore is a great little winter plant. And then last couple, so wintergreen. They wouldn't use wintergreen these days. I think that's a cute little plant. Native wintergreen, it gets our little wintergreen gum. You can eat the berries. But we get some pretty cool varieties of this in now. This is one called Winter Splash. It's got beautiful pinks, greens, whites going. That's all through the whole season. Really nice in the winter time. Still get the bright red berries on them here in the fall, winter. We have cherry berries. It's like, it's too much variegation for me. I want green. Same thing. We have those out there with huge red berries on them right now that I could use as a little ground cover, kind of a little mounding ground cover, or a great one for containers again, for a little interesting pot through the holidays here too. So wintergreen's very nice. I thought I had one more here. Oh, Virginia is the last one. This one always makes me laugh. They call this pig squeak now. I was thinking elephant ears, but there's too many plants that have elephant ears names in them. So Virginia is a great evergreen perennial. You can see the color just starting to come in right now. So that will intensify here in the fall with the cold. But I would keep my structure in the winter with a deep burgundy red foliage. Then I get my bright pink flower stalks come up in March. We start blooming and off we go for another season. So again, one you want to give maybe a little bit of shade to and not put in all day sun. But Virginia is pretty durable plant. That's one I know my kids probably walk on mine on occasion. I don't even know they do, and they're still kicking in my yard. So one that can take a little bit of abuse as well. Okay. So I don't know. You guys tell me. Did we get a little bit of everything up here? I made it in only 50 minutes. That's a good time for this. That's a lot of plants. So you're welcome to look through the list. Like I said at the beginning, I mean, this is a fun class because the nurseries are always packed in the spring. You probably got a maximum selection of everything. But this time of year, you got maximum selection of a lot of different stuff. And again, if you're wanting your yard to look sharp all through the season, come by every season and look at some stuff and think about fall color. A big part of my article next week was, I'm tired of everyone saying, I lose its leaves, I don't want it in my yard. I want evergreen. I only want evergreen. I mean, it's your yard, so you can do what you want. But just having a little accent plant like that. I didn't even bring witch hazel in. It's one of my favorite winter trees. I got a yellow blooming witch hazel. It smells incredible and turns beautiful color in the fall. But having some of that stuff mixed in with all the evergreens, to me adds the fall season and gets you a little bit more year-round interest for sure. Yeah.
So on the list you have Edgeworthians.
Yeah, paper bush.
Do you sell it?
It's really hard to find. Yeah, I've got a line on. We should have a pretty good chunk of that come in right after the holidays because that's like a January, February bloomer. Okay. I'm trying for the orange. I really want more of the orange one, but we should have the yellow one for sure.
And how hardy is that?
I think it's hardy enough up here. To me, it's a lot like the discussion with Daphne. If I have great drainage, I do that one in shade, not as much afternoon sun at all on Edgeworthia. I'm going to probably have good luck. If I put it in and it gets too wet, it's going to crash out the first winter kind of thing. But that's a spectacular, cool specimen plant. You tend to see it a lot down at the Flower and Garden Show, and then a lot of us can never tend to find it to have it for sale. But we do I'll have yellow in for sure. I'm trying to get a definite answer on a few orange as well, because the orange one's pretty sweet. Same fragrance, but pretty cool plant. Yeah, absolutely.
And you said after the holidays?
Yeah, usually that's probably mid-January-ish. Yeah, usually right after we kind of finish inventory and get going, we start getting in some of the winter stuff. If I can find them sooner and get them to ship, I'll probably grab them here pretty quick, because whatever we can find, we hoard those if we can. We never have enough. That's a plant. I don't know if you guys, I think I've seen you guys all around here. We keep a wish list, and we do. I don't think a lot of nurseries do anymore. That's one to leave your name on, because when we get them in, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 20 if I'm lucky, and we go straight to the wish list. All right, who's been asking us for these? Going back sometimes on that a year, and it's like, okay, you get first crack, second crack, third crack. We go through the list and let people know they're in, and then typically they're gone. You know, there might be just a plant or two left to throw out for everybody else, and then I hope we find some more again soon, you know, kind of thing. So we can do some more questions, but just a reminder, this is always a easy class discount class. So for coming, you always get 20% off of the class. I could probably call any plant on this property that looks cool in the winter or the fall or any time of this year, so you got 20% off all your plants. How's that? Shrubs, trees, ground covers, everything out there. It doesn't have to be deciduous or evergreen, but just make it easy. If you want to do some shopping, you got 20% off everything. Save you a little bit of cash today too. You got till Friday, so it starts today. You got all through the week. I think the weather's supposed to be beautiful today, but you got through Friday to use the class discount. I do record these. We usually edit them on Monday. I probably won't get to it till Monday. Nicole will get it edited up, and it'll be up on the website too. We got a little YouTube channel, so you can always go back and what was that thing you said about whatever? You can go look at it real quick. It'll be up on the YouTube here pretty quick. So, all right. So you got any more questions? Did you get some inspiration?
Yes, I did.
A couple things. All right, that's what we're here for.
Gotta go plan now.
I got a plan.
Yeah,
That's what we start with. A good plan.
Where are those cyclamens at in the nursery?
So we keep those up front. Yeah, it doesn't mean they're not up with the seasonal stuff, but it's not an annual by any means. So we keep them up there. So you'll see a whole table full for sale up on the front area. Yeah, we just got them in this week.
So I have a question about those.
Yeah.
There is a cyclamen grower
Yep.
over here.
Bouquet Bank. That's where
And
we get them from.
I asked him about dividing them or anything. He says, no, you can't because they have this one corm. You'll never get more plants.
Yeah.
But I get all these little starts from all over the place.
Yeah.
And somebody told me that it's the ants that do that.
Yeah, if you get a crown, if you can find a crown on them, you can not like now or probably in quite a few years, but down the road you could take a little tip here and there and expand your collection. Yeah, I think you can move them a bit.
Well, I don't.
They find their own way. Oh yeah,
pots that are growing next to them.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, ants might move them. Usually, to me, again, that one's the drainage thing. If I've got woodsy, barky, typical kind of woodland garden soil, I'm going to have happy cyclamen. If I got drainage issues, I'm too wet, you're not going to have very happy cyclamen pretty quick. But they'll naturally make a pretty good patch on those as you can get them going. Yeah, I mean, I waited for years for mine to go, all right, now I got some cyclamen, kind of thing. Yeah. Yep. Well, thanks for coming in.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Do a little shopping if you need. We got lots of staff. I'm gonna clean up my mess in here, but you got all kinds of staff out there if you want to ask any questions too. I got Margot, Frank, everybody's around out there today. So.
Okay. Cool. Thank
All
you.
right. Yeah. Thanks for coming.